Welcome to the Talking Sports Law Podcast, created and produced by K&L Gates. Each episode features a discussion of legal issues from the world of sports, interviews with sports law professionals, and analysis of recent trends. Let's get this episode kicked off.
Welcome to another episode of Talking Sports Law from K&L Gates. My name is John Wilson. I am flying solo today, no co-host, as my normal co-host Trevor Gates had a conflict. But I am very excited for today's guest. Welcome to the podcast, Caesar Lopez, the Chief Administrative Officer and General Counsel for Orlando City Soccer Club, Orlando Pride, and Exploria Stadium. Caesar, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. Excited to be here today.
Yeah, and we had to struggle through some technical difficulties, but we managed to find a way. So here we are. I really appreciate you sharing a little bit of your time.
And that's the life. That's the life that we live now. And technology, we're at the mercy of technology.
Isn't that the truth? I mean, you would think that after 2 years we would have figured this all out, but even still. So let's just start with a little bit about your background, Caesar. So can you talk a little bit about the path that you took to join Orlando City and the entire organization there?
Yeah, of course. Excited to talk about my role in Orlando City, Orlando Pride, Exploria Stadium, but it was a long trajectory to get here. So spent some time playing soccer early in my career, which is kind of where I got the opportunity to marry two passions of mine, right? Law and soccer. And so when I entered into law school, figured out that was a path for me forward. That was a really exciting one, and I started to build some skills to get me there, really focused on the transactional side of law and tried to figure out how those skills, whether they are not only on the legal front, but also more importantly on the business front, understanding how those two disciplines intersect, and then was able to really get a lot of transferable skills in the transactional space in order to get me positioned to go to MLS. And then from MLS, I spent some time really learning the soccer business, which is a little bit different than just a normal operating business. And then had the opportunity to transfer again to my hometown. And Orlando is where I was raised. And so I did a little bit of a boomerang, went up to New York, spent and the Connecticut area, spent a better part of 12 years up there, and then was able to return home and hopefully making an impact here at Orlando City, Orlando Pride.
That's awesome. Can you talk a little bit about the transition that you had to go through from being in-house at MLS, where you served the league as a whole and supported a whole bunch of different clubs, obviously, to then going or returning to Orlando, where you were just focused on OCSC and the Pride. Can you talk a little bit about that transition?
Yes, of course. The transition. I mean, really spend some time talking about my role at MLS and why, as a single entity structure, we had to oversee multiple teams. Our legal team was fairly small. We had a group of 5 of us at the league level at the time, and our responsibility was really servicing the clubs, learning, the challenges, the issues that they have from a transactional space, whether they are being supported from a sponsorship space, and really focus on on driving the commercial activity at the local club level. And I had an opportunity, I think, an opportunity of a lifetime to help oversee 10 different teams. So I got to see 10 different markets, manage 10 different ways of dealing, doing sponsorship and other commercial deals, whether they were related to media or otherwise. And then there was this league level support that I had to assist with in some of the commercial activity expansion, as well as overseeing the intellectual property portfolio at the league office. So I had my hands in a couple of different areas of MLS. And so what has been an interesting transition is when you get to a team, you get to live the day in and day out. And I do like to highlight that. I was asked that question recently is, the decisions that you make, you see the impact of them immediately. Whereas, when you're at a league, you're probably looking more long-term about what, this is going to look like in 3, 4, 5, 7, 10 years. And it's interesting, even when I came to Orlando, you got to see some of the plans that I was working on 3 years of, prior at the league. You get to see them come to fruition, and you're like, that's what I was working toward. So there's just more, people always ask, like, is it better? Which one's better, to work at the league or the club? And I just say it's different, right? And they're different sort of realities that you live day in and day out. Obviously, you have the results on the field that matter a little bit more at the local level, but you also get to see the operation, and you have to support different aspects of the business at a local level. And so those are really intriguing, interesting issues that come up, that pop up day in and day out. We have a unique property here in Orlando where you have a men's team, you have a women's team. We also have an MLS Next Pro team, as well as a stadium that we own 100% and operate. So there's certainly different levels, and I get to pull from different experiences that I've had at MLS, whether they are doing other events or whether it is related to workers' comp issues that you're dealing with at a local level. But there are certainly levels of the operation that you get to see here that are just amplified more on a day-to-day basis, rather than when you're at an MLS league, you're kind of overseeing the long-term strategic vision.
Yeah, that's a really fascinating description of just kind of the differences between the league and the club council. I've had the privilege to talk to a lot of different GCs from throughout MLS, and there's quite a bit of variation among the various clubs as far as the legal teams and how they look. How does the legal team look at Orlando City, Orlando Pride? Like, obviously, you're the general counsel, and then what does it look like beyond that?
Yeah, I mean, this is an evolving space for everybody in MLS. I say one of the priorities and strategic priorities I had when I was at the league was trying to, and to think about it now, I wouldn't say trying to convince, but more so just showing the true impact of hiring a lawyer locally. So now I believe most of the teams have their own attorneys in place, to your point, but how do you build from there? So the way we've built here in my organization, I oversee the legal department, but as my roles have expanded into other verticals and areas of the business, we hired and we have a superstar in Arusa Kabani, who is our associate general counsel. From there, we're looking at we're hopeful, but we're looking at a couple of different additions and roles and responsibilities, because our organization is getting bigger, it's growing, and it's not just a volume issue. It's also making sure that we have the right folks in place to have compliance overall.
Yeah, definitely. Compliance is such a huge issue and a complicated one as well, for sure. I know that the club recently went through an ownership transition, and Flavio Augusto da Silva, sold to the Wilf family, and the Wilf family came in as majority owners. Can you talk a little bit about that transition from the prior ownership group to now the Wilf family?
Yeah, of course. We're really excited here, and I think Orlando as a whole, our market as a whole, is very excited to have the Wilf family join really the not only MLS but NWSL, and then also having the impact here in the Central Florida community with Flavio and that group selling to the Wilf family. All credit to them, right? They helped build a really amazing platform. And now we have the Wilf family really to inject really some rocket fuel, not only into our organization, but also for our fan base, for our community. Really want to make sure that we're winning championships, really want to make sure that we're having a long-term impact in the community, and then improving our overall guest experience. So those are like really big focuses for us now. And, it's all credit to having really tenured sports owners. They're great to work with. And we're also, really grateful to have Jared Dillon, who's our new president of business operations as well, overseeing the next level of what we can be as an organization.
Yeah, I think it's fantastic when, really experienced sports operators like the Wilf family come into MLS just to, like you said, kind of raise the overall level of the product that's on the field and off the field. I would imagine as a general counsel, you face a whole variety of things every single day. What are some of the most complex issues that you face in your role with Orlando City and with the Pride?
Depends. What day are we going to talk about? No, but seriously, the complexity of the issues is something that I actually find very exciting about being a general counsel in MLS. It is a growing league, and NWSL is even at a different level in terms of growth. And learning the different strategic priorities for each league, as well as how we grow two different operations, is really interesting. And I think any startup lawyer will tell you there are certainly things that you have to take into consideration, whether you are growing a brand like the Orlando Pride or if you are accelerating a brand like Orlando City. There are different considerations to take into account and different risk profiles, but you're also learning from two different businesses. And so it really does depend on the day. Some of our complexities can be around operations. How do we amplify and also accelerate the usage of Exploria Stadium in different, unique, innovative ways? How do we integrate and interject technology into that process? How do we grow our revenues, whether those are through really complex, I'll say, issues around sports betting or cryptocurrency? How do we figure out whether or not we can optimize what we're doing day in and day out? So there's a lot of business and integration of business and legal issues that really you can say pick a day and I can tell you 15 different issues that we're going to deal with that day that will make our life more exciting. But again, that is what we do day in and day out. And that's why I get up every morning and really excited how we can make an impact here in Orlando.
So you might have kind of previewed the answer to the next question, but I'll go ahead and ask it anyway. But, what are some of the bigger trends or I guess hot button issues that you see in the world of sports law in the coming year?
In the coming year, I do see that, I touched on it a little bit briefly, right? Is how do we integrate different levels of currency? How do we integrate sports betting in a way that doesn't compromise or cannibalize other revenue streams of our business? I think integrating technology as well as, and I say technology can expand to things like the metaverse, right? How do we utilize that for fan engagement? The different platforms that exist out there are certainly prime for us to be able to engage our fan base a little bit differently than what has been a traditional model. And so what do we want to do is make sure, we're filling up our building every day, but also integrating and making sure that we're meeting our fans where they are. That is the biggest challenge that I think is ahead of us, that we have all of these different, I don't want to say competitions, but competition for time that we need to work against. And I think it's one that we're going to take a very innovative approach on. And I'm excited about that. But it is, technology is at the core of what I think will be the next phase of engagement for our fans overall.
Yeah, it is so interesting because if you would have said to me the word metaverse even, 12 months ago, I would have said, no, wait, what? What are you saying? It's just absolutely burst onto the scene. And like you said, of course, crypto and NFTs are another, very hot topic that everyone's kind of trying to figure out where it fits into their overall business. And of course, sports betting, I don't know what's going to happen down in Florida, but it's been quite a roller coaster ride to see if it's going to get legalized there in your state as well. Caesar, we do have law students who frequently listen to the podcast. Shout out to all of you students who are finishing up your school year here before too long. But, if you were going to give some advice to, Caesar Lopez sitting in the classroom, when you were a law student at Pace, what would you say to Caesar as a law student?
One thing I really enjoy having conversations with law students about their path. What I look back on and what I kind of go back to is some advice that I got from which is now the dean of my law school. Making sure that you got the right skills is certainly phase number one. I had an opportunity to jump into sports early on in my law school career. And I actually got some advice from the dean that was like, hey, look, make sure you get the right skills in place before you go put yourself in the dream job. And that way you can impress them with what you can do. And so I always kind of go back to that. And I'm thankful for that advice because I really worked on my core skills, whether those were research, writing, but also drafting around contracts and agreements, so that when I jumped in with my internships at MLS and at Beiersdorf, I was hitting the ground running versus learning on the job. So I think that there's a core skill element to making sure that you got those things in place. But I always tell every student, do things a little bit differently. Make yourself stand out. One story that I always share, I can share now, I guess, is during my first year of law school, I kind of may or may not have missed a class to go to a CLE where I was really the only student at this CLE, and I happened to meet my future employer, the General Counsel of MLS and so I stood out to him because I was literally the only student in this group of lawyers at a CLE. But I think that was a great networking opportunity where you're sort of setting yourself apart from everybody else. But I always tell people to carve their own path. There's no direct path to where I am right now or where you may want to be. And, the different levels of experience only add value to roles like mine. Having experiences in different areas of law, having experiences in different areas, in different businesses, all can impact how you can contribute to an organization. And I always just tell them first, see how, I know the organization can do great for you. What can you do for the organization?
I think that is absolutely outstanding advice. I wish I would have heard something like that when I was a law student many years ago. All right, so Caesar, you just heard that whistle, which means we have reached the end of our regular time, and we are heading into extra time.
I love the soccer fun.
Oh, yeah. For extra time, I'm going to fire 5 rapid-fire questions at you, and I'm just going to ask you to respond with whatever comes to your mind first. So, Caesar Lopez, are you ready for extra time?
I sure hope so.
All right, here we go. Our sources tell us that you have a dog. What type of a dog is it, and what is the dog's name?
You have great sources. I do have a dog. His name is Hendrix, and he is a golden doodle of 6 years old. So he is my pride and joy right now. So I'm really happy.
I love it. I'm a big fan of doodles myself, considering my furry coworker is a Labradoodle. And of course, I live in Seattle, the home of Jimi Hendrix. So it's a great name. All right. What is your favorite activity or hobby when you're not working?
When I'm not working, good question. Or while I'm working, I sadly, and I say this, as long as I can continue to do it, I will continue to play soccer in my free time, which is kind of funny, but I really enjoy being out there on the field, reliving my old glorious days when I could move a lot faster. So, but that is literally one of my favorite hobbies, and spending time really with my wife out. We try to get away every once in a while, but those are the 2 hobbies.
And what is the first website or app that you're checking every morning?
Guilty pleasure, probably Twitter. I would say is certainly a platform I like to catch up on what's transpired over the time that I've been sleeping. But that's always a good one. I may or may not have dipped into the TikTok world a little bit, so just trying to manage my time there. But those are good ones for me from an app perspective. but I'm usually just trying to stay up on trends, what's going on in the soccer world.
All right, so Caesar, what's the best live sports moment that you've witnessed in person?
I'm going to sound like a homer on this one, but it is absolutely true. We had a really, really unique soccer experience where it was a U.S. Open Cup match, and our team went into penalty kicks. Our goalkeeper got red carded. We had a player step in and save the winning PK against New York City FC. And it was arguably the wildest sports moment. I think there was a story on it done on MLSsoccer.com. It was almost like it felt like it could have been a Netflix series of what transpired. But the emotions of, going from almost winning the game to almost losing the game to getting a red card to figuring out there's no chance we can win this, to Rodrigo Slagle saving the penalty kick, and then Benji putting away the final kick. It was just the emotions of it all was the best experience I've had. And then I would say the second one, again, is an experience that I will probably never relive. It is called the running of the wall. So one of our other Open Cup games, we had a game where the stadium, we have a standing section only stadium, and a section of our stadium, and the fans ran from one side to the other to support the goalkeeper in a penalty kick. And we ended up winning that as well. So there was just these two penalty situations that were the best moments that I've ever lived. And so I was really grateful to be here in person for that.
Yeah, as a soccer fan, it doesn't get much more exciting than a penalty shootout, right? And especially if you have a field player who has to step into goal. I mean, that's just insane. All right, final question for extra time. If you weren't working as a sports lawyer, what would you be doing?
Ooh, I really like the consulting space around psychology. I think I would probably be a psychologist. What we do day in and day out is really about people. And so I really enjoy that side and learning a little bit more. I think I probably would have done some sort of degree or learning around psychology or been some sort of consultant in that capacity.
That's great. Well, Caesar, thank you so much for joining this episode of Talking Sports Law. It's been a real pleasure to have you, and appreciate you making the time.
This was fun. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. And go Orlando.
That brings us to the end of this episode of Talking Sports Law from K&L Gates. I'm John Wilson, your host, and you can find all of our episodes on Hub Talks on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. And thanks for listening.